want to do cardio because they're like, oh, I got to do burn calories, burn calories, burn calories. But it's just so much more complicated than that. And for sure, burning calories, sweating feels good. I mean, I would lie if I love running. I'm a runner, I'm a triathlete.
Mhm.
But I also really believe, like for myself, I don't run to get in shape. I get in shape to run, meaning I do all my strength training, I do all my stuff so I'm strong enough to run. So first of all, I guess I would say that you don't want to just do cardio because you're going to get injured. And if you're not strong enough to do the cardio, then you're going to get injured and you're going to have to stop anyway. So that's sort of not even related to weight loss. That's just related to sort of consistency and injury prevention. You have to have a well-balanced routine or you're going to hurt your knees, you're going to hurt your hips, you're going to hurt your back. So, you need the strength training, you need the core, you need the stretching, you need the cardio. So that's just sort of with consistency, injury prevention, that sort of bucket.
Welcome to Q's Health and Wellness Podcast, your source for living a healthier lifestyle and developing a better mind, body, and soul. Through guidance, tips, and stories of highly successful fitness gurus, athletes, and individuals who are passionate about enhancing all aspects of life, we provide you with the tools to help you take your lifestyle to another level. And now your host, Quinn Mitchell.
Welcome to Q's Health and Wellness Podcast. This is your host, Quinn Mitchell. Today I have a very special guest, Kathleen Trotter. Has been in the fitness industry for over 20 years. She's a personal trainer, writer, and author of Finding Your Fit. How are you doing today?
I'm thrilled to be here. I think we're going to have a really good conversation. And I think, we were chatting before we started recording just about how we both really, think how you talk to yourself is the key to health and wellness. And when you said that you believed in both gratitude and mindset, I was like, we're going to be friends, fast friends. Those are two things I feel so strongly about, being so grateful for what you have and focusing on what you can control and letting go of the rest. And then also just really one of the things you can control is how you talk to yourself. And it's just, it's so important. So
I appreciate you coming on the show. So for people that's not familiar with you, would you mind giving a brief introduction about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. I've been in the fitness industry for about 20 years. And I don't know, there's that phrase like research is me search. And I really think that that's the thing about health and wellness for me is that I am a personal trainer and a coach, but really what I am is this person who's sort of muddling around and along and trying to figure out how I want to live my journey and how I best sort of bring myself to the table. And I've been struggling with that my entire life. And therefore, I find it really exciting to work with other people who are sort of on the journey. I was very overweight and unhealthy for the first half of my life. And, I was 6 feet tall and I was very awkward and taller than all the boys. And, we moved around a lot as a kid because my mom was an actress. And it was just, I don't know, I felt always out of place and gradually starting to become healthier has made me feel just so much better in my own skin. And it's been a journey. And so I really have enjoyed taking this journey with all my clients and sort of, going through that with them. And I think that I can be helpful to people because I appreciate that, maybe some people are born with it sort of natural, quote unquote, naturally to be active, but a lot of people aren't. And they do have to find their fit. And that's the premise of my first book, Finding Your Fit. So I have two, Finding Your Fit and then Your Fittest Future Self. And the premise of the first one really is like, you have to figure out what works for you. You have to decide that being active is a non-negotiable. But how you are active is based on your life realities and your life stage and, your financial responsibilities and your injury history and your gender and all of those things. And one way of being fit is not better than the other. Like if you're a pro basketball player, your fitness regime and your eating is going to look very, very different than a mother of 3 kids, and that's great. Like there's no one is wrong or one is right. It's just once you know your goals and once you know who you are, then you can match what you do on a daily basis to your goals. And I think that that's critical. So yeah, who I am is somebody who's been muddling along for many years, and I've learned through a lot of failures. And I've sort of learned that it's all about knowing how to struggle well. Like none of this is ever easy. It just kind of gets a little bit easier and you kind of get off the floor a little bit faster, you course correct, you learn. I always say to my clients, you fall off your horse, you get back on, but you get back on a more informed rider. So you learn about yourself and you learn the self-talk that works and you learn the workouts that work and the mantras that you can use and the things that are going to be your reason to get out of bed. And ultimately, it doesn't matter what works for, your favorite celebrity or Kathleen or Quinn or whatever. It only matters like what's the self-talk that's going to get you out of bed, what's going to get you moving. Do you have a mantra or self-talk? Like what gets you out of bed when you want to keep sleeping? Because bed can be amazing, right? It's like you're like, oh, I want to stay here. It's awesome.
So for me, it's more of my end goal of having that ambition, because for me, I played college basketball, so I always wanted to be better than my competition. So if I knew they were training at 5:30, I would wake up at 4 just so I can get my extra reps in. Or if I knew that they were leaving practice, or even my teammates, if I knew that they were leaving practice, I knew if I wanted to be the best, I had to stay extra. So it was just always that little mental thing for me that really put me over the edge, that made me get up before everybody and be the last one leaving the gym.
It's so interesting. It's what I love about this job, and really truly I mean this, is that it's so different what makes one person tick than somebody else. And like, so for me, it's actually very different. And that doesn't mean that I'm a pretty driven person and I get up really early, and but it's very different. Like if I start to compare myself, like I've always done more individual sports. So I did triathlon, I did marathons, I did swim team. And I always found that the more I externalized my goals about other people, the less successful I was. And the more I internalized my goals of like, I want to get fitter for me, or like if my personal best was X, I want to get stronger. Or if I was doing this before because of a reason of shaming myself, I want to do it because I want to get like strong versus like shrinking, like, but that's a really interesting thing for me to hear you say, because if I had used that self-talk, I actually think that would make me go back to bed. Because no, it's true. Like I've always been very much like, it's not, it hasn't resonated, this idea of like being better. And I think it's probably partly just the type of sports I played. Like I didn't play basketball. I didn't play those again. It's always, when you're doing a marathon, it's against your your previous
yourself,
time. Yeah. And like, who knows what comes first, the nature of the nurture. Like, I don't know if I chose those sports because that's more inherent to who I am, or the more you do those sports, the more you think in that way. I have no idea where the chicken and the egg is of that, but I do know that, like, I think that as people listen to this, I hope that what they're thinking is, oh, interesting, what works for me? Because, try on all these different motivational hats and try your version, then try my version, then try somebody else. And then, if it gets you out of bed, then go for it. And if it makes you sort of be like, oh God, like that's terrible. That for me, that almost feels, not scary is not the right word, but I don't know if it's overwhelming, or there's something about it that I think would just make me take my covers and put them over my head and be like, ah, right. But when I say to myself, like, Kathleen, do the thing, like one of the things I always say to myself is, Kathleen, you got to do the things that when your head hits the pillow tonight, you will be proud of yourself. Like what will make you feel like you have lived in your integrity? What will make you feel like you are the person that when you're on your deathbed, you're not going to think, God, I wish I had done something else, right? Like I want to lay my head down on the pillow, both at night tonight, but also when I'm dying. And I want to be able to say, like, I'm proud of my choices. And that goes with my health, my eating, but also my relationships. Like, sometimes relationships are not easy. Like, I love my parents, but sometimes doing things are more like, it almost falls in like that sort of like obligation. Or even with friendships, you're like, oh my God, I'm tired, I just want to like stay and watch television. You're like, but no, like I love this person and I have to show them love. So I'm going to get up and I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to go to that family dinner. I'm going to go to that birthday party. Now, ultimately you normally end up having a really good time and you're glad you went. But in order to get yourself there, what doesn't work is to sort of shame myself. Like it doesn't work for me to say like, well, I should do this, or it's expected of me, because that just makes you want to be like, well, screw you, I don't want to do what's expected of me. What works for me is to say, when you're on your deathbed, or when your parents are in their deathbed, like you will feel so badly that you put your momentary sort of desire above what makes you proud. Anyway, so it's just interesting to hear. And I think that's what's so cool about health and wellness, that everybody has, because we're all unique beings. We all have a different reason. We all have a different passion, and we all have different goals, and that's okay. Like, I think we get in our own way when we think like, oh, well, I should be training like that person, or I should have a goal like that person, or, that person can do 1 million box jumps. Well, I can't do 1 million box jumps. So I might as well just like not try, and it's yeah, and it's very cool. It's a cool thing to talk about and to think like, what gets you out of bed,
Now, while speaking on motivation, I know when people are going to hear this, it'll probably be around New Year's time. So, everybody in that New Year's resolution, they want to stay motivated to get fit. So what is there any advice that you would give to men or women that are first starting out in the gym, and then everybody hits that plateau where they have the momentum and then it hits? So what is something that you would advise to them that when they hit that plateau to help them get through that?
Awesome question. And well, you might be surprised by my answer, but my answer is, motivation is not the way to go. So let me back up and explain. And I think maybe as an athlete, you would appreciate this really strongly. So motivation is akin to an emotion. It comes and goes, right? It goes up and down. And the problem is that we often set our goals when we're really highly motivated. So it's like January 1st, and I'm like, I'm going to get fit. I'm going to get ripped. I'm going to lose 20 pounds. So you feel really excited at that moment. And you think, not you, but like one thinks, I'm always going to feel that motivated. So I don't need to create systems. I don't need to create a plan. I don't need to find things that sort of nudge me and constrain future me. So what I'm saying to all of your listeners is, when you're the most motivated, that's when you set your goal. But the one you're going to derail your progress is when you are not feeling motivated. So you do not need to set goals and systems for your motivated self. You need to set goals and systems for your unmotivated self. Meaning, think about the times in the next 3 months or the next year that you were going to be the least motivated. That's what you have to figure out a plan of attack for. So when it's 6 a.m. and it's freezing cold because it's winter, or when you've gone to the gym 5 days in a row and your legs are so tired, but you need to get up and go, how are you going to make yourself go? And it could be as simple as having a fitness buddy waiting. It could be having a trainer. It could be logging your workouts. It could be, I mean, this is ridiculous, but I sleep in my exercise clothes if I think I'm not going to be able to get up in the morning. Really? And then I wake up and I'm already dressed. And I'm like, oh, whatever, I'll just go. But like, it could be anything. Like maybe it's that you have a dog and you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to make sure that my dog walk is like a much more active dog walk than it used to. Instead of like sauntering, I'm going to do interval training. Like, I don't care what you do. But the key to remember is that healthy people, fit people, it's not that they're always motivated. They just always show up. And that is a very different thing. We're not always motivated to go to work. Like, it's not that every single morning I wake up and think, yes, I get to go to work. Like, I love my job. Don't get me wrong. I do. I love my job. But I still have days where I'm like, oh God, I wish I was on vacation today. But guess what? I don't phone in sick because I know that I have to go to work, and it's a non-negotiable. And that's what has to happen with health and wellness. Like, you don't always have to be motivated. I don't freaking care if you're motivated. Just do the shit, like do the work, like get yourself to the gym. Now that's easier said than done. So the thing I would say to people is, instead of thinking about motivation, think about systems. So systems are things that you set in place now when you are motivated that constrain your future self. So again, that's that idea of having a trainer, having a fitness buddy, or if you're somebody who always eats food late at night, get that crap out of your house. Don't have it there. It's not an option. Right? Like, find ways that when you are unmotivated, you'll do it anyway. Sign up for a fitness class you've given some that you've already paid the money, right? Like, whatever, join a running club, join a sports team, like learn a new sport, or join a basketball team or like a rec basketball team. So then you have to show up Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday because your team is waiting for you, right? Like, people who play team sports, that's what they say to me all the time. Like, I'd let myself down, but I would never let my team down. So if you're that type of a person, do that. If you're a family person and you know that you're going to be much more motivated if your kids are being active, then, go play football with your son, go play football with your daughter, whatever. I don't care what you do, but you have to find a way that will make you, future less motivated you, stay the course, because you're always going to have days where you're really tired. You're going to have days where your boss pissed you off. You're going to have days where your husband or your wife made you absolutely insane, and those are the days you're going to want to say, screw it, I'm going to go have a beer, or screw it, I'm going to watch Netflix, or whatever, I'm going to keep sleeping, right? And that's just human. It doesn't make you a bad person. It just literally makes you a human being. So what are you going to do when you want to say screw it, when you want to have one of those moments where you're like, oh, well, who cares? And then you wake up the next morning and you're like, God damn it. Like, that was a terrible decision. I don't know. So like, what's an example of what's something that you do that makes you, when you are unbelievably unmotivated, what it makes you get to the gym?
So for me, it's more of, I think about how I'm going to feel if I don't do it. So
yes, I love that. Yeah.
So after, like, say if I wake up at 5 a.m. and let's say I feel like skipping this workout, by 12 o'clock, I'm going to think back and be like, why did I just go work out? Is this
absolutely
a feeling in that particular moment? So for me, it's getting over my feelings and just pushing into drive mode and just digging into just going and doing what I have to do instead of doing what I feel like doing.
Yeah. Not putting your momentary desires ahead of your ultimate goals. I think the thing about that is, so I do that as well. And I think it's super useful. It's one of the reasons why my second book is called Your Fittest Future Self. And the point of that is that it's the things that we do in this moment that create our fitter version of ourselves. So you have to be able to, like, you cannot become a fitter version of you if you cannot control the moment that you are in, which is why I think that mindset and therapy and all that stuff is very helpful for health and wellness, because people ultimately they derail their health success because they let the desires of the moment, whether that desire is, I'm sad, so I'm going to eat because I'm sad, or I'm mad, so I'm going to drink because I'm mad, or whatever it is. They let the momentary emotion make the decision for them versus stepping back and making that decision. But here's where I think is the tricky part. In order to have that knowledge of I will feel better if I train, it's that like weird chicken and the egg. You have to make yourself train enough to know that you will feel better if you train. So it's like if you've never worked out before and you don't have enough of that knowledge, you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh God, I don't want to. It's going to hurt. Like it's sweaty, it's hard. And it does hurt to work out. Like it's a lovely hurt and it feels really like you feel strong. And like, I love that feeling. I'm like, oh my God, my muscles are exhausting. But I love that feeling because I've had 20 years where I've done it. Let me tell you, when I was 10 years old and I was overweight and didn't work out, I did not love that feeling of lifting, right? So I think if you're somebody listening to this and you think, okay, I am not there yet, I don't love it yet, I don't have that data, then that's where you have to say to yourself, okay, I'm going to make myself for a certain amount of time, no matter how I feel, I'm going to say to myself, okay, you don't have the data yet, but you got to get the data. And it's that sort of, you don't create a habit is something that's like automated. It just is natural, but nothing becomes natural until you put the conscious effort into making it natural. And I think that's where being on a sport team is really helpful, because you didn't realize that as a kid, going to basketball practice every day was creating a habit. Like you just thought, like, I want to be good at a sport. But ultimately, years and years and years of being on a team gave your brain the data. So when you wake up in the morning and you're like, freaking forking, it's cold, I want to stay in bed, you have so much data that you can be just like, just get the hell out of bed and go, and you will feel better. But that's from years of practice, right? So I think that people have to get over that this health thing is going to be easy at the beginning. I mean, it's never easy, but it definitely gets easier. But it gets easier after years of seeing like, this is hard, and hard is not bad, right? Like, I don't know. I think there's something about our kind of current world that we think anything hard is bad. Like it's so easy. Like you can just go on Google and you can order Uber Eats, and like everything is so like instantaneous. But health is like it's you gotta be able to sort of live in the discomfort for a bit in order to get to the point where you're like, okay, like this is something that I mean, maybe you don't love it, but at least you don't hate it, or you can feel the positives of it or something. Like, I don't know. So I'll give everybody listening. I did, as I said, I've gone to therapy for years. And the thing that my therapist did to me that I thought was brilliant, and I'd love anybody listening to try it and then message me on social media and tell me what they think of it. But it's basically 2 weeks where you promise yourself that before every workout, you put on a scale of 1 to 10, your mood. Like, are you 10 being like, yes, I feel amazing, and 1 being I feel terrible. And then you put your mood after the workout. And what's awesome about this is you go and you get 2 weeks of data where you see you always feel better when you move. Now, you might not go from a 1 to a 10, but if you start at a 1, you're going to at least get to a 1.1. And even if you go up by a smidge amount, you feel a little bit better. And then you also feel proud of yourself because you moved, right? And some days you go from a 2 to a 4 or a 1 to a 7, right? So sometimes it's a big jump, sometimes it's a small jump. But if you that's just a great way that you then, when you're in bed and you don't want to work out, or you've gone to work and you're tired, then you can literally say to yourself, like, no, I have the data. Like, I can see that I always feel better. And it's just one way to make your self-talk stronger, right? Because if you don't have the data, it's hard, because then really what you're saying to yourself is, you will feel stronger and better, but maybe you won't actually feel stronger and better because you've never actually done it. And you're just believing what these people said. And like, it feels kind of like a lie to yourself, and we don't do well with that. So I don't know. I think somehow people listening have to find a way to get themselves going for enough time that they can get the data. And then they have to really like lean into noting that data, like really pay attention to the pride they feel and the strength they feel, and just like the sleep that they feel is better, right? Like you'll sleep better. There's so many things in your life that will be better, but you got to give yourself the time to accumulate the data so you actually feel the difference.
Definitely. And I know you touched on it a little bit. I know we chatted before we started this. It's just the topic of the mental awareness that a lot of people overlook in the health and wellness industry. I know I'm sure if you had clients in the past where they've dealt with trainers and they only focus on their body, but my thing is, you have to actually focus on the mindset, because if the mindset
Yeah,
isn't there, then you can't even work on your body properly. Because I know a lot of
totally.
clients, they deal with like mental depression per se, and then a lot of people, especially when it gets in the wintertime, they get tap into the depression mode because it's naturally colder outside. They don't want to go out the house. So what advice do you give your clients that deal with this depression, or the overall mental aspect of working out and trying to make sure their mental is on the right path?
Oh, what an amazing question. And I feel like we could be here for like 10 years talking about it. I think maybe the first thing, I just try to get them on board that their mindset and their mental health and fitness is important, because I think a lot of people they're not on board to believe that at the beginning. Like, and so there's this great Derek Sivers quote that's if knowledge was enough, we'd all be billionaires with six-pack abs. And I say that to them, and I say, like, we mostly know what to do. We know we need to drink more water, we need to exercise more, we need to sleep more. But the thing with life is knowing and doing are not always the same thing. For the most part, they're really not the same thing. Like, so it's one thing to know that you should be going to the gym and lifting some weights, and that you should be, sleeping, prioritizing your sleep because it's so important for balancing your hormones, right? Like sleeping for men, super important for testosterone, sleeping for women, important for their female hormones, and for both sexes regulating like ghrelin and leptin, which helps you feel full and satiated. So it's going to help you not eat that sugar, right? Like, so sleeping, for example, is one of those things. Like, everybody knows you should sleep, but like, it's 11 o'clock at night and you're watching TV and you don't want to go to sleep. And so it's knowing that you should sleep is very different than actually being able to say, okay, I'm going to put the TV remote down and I'm going to go to bed, because if I want to have a good day tomorrow, it involves getting a good night's sleep. Like, so that's just one example of the knowing and the doing. So first, I think with clients, I just really try to hammer that home, that knowledge is for sure, it's an important piece. You got to have the knowledge, but for the most part, that's not what's holding people back. What's holding people back is a way of communicating with themselves that's actually productive, right? And we all have these terrible roommates in our head. Like, I joke. So my partner, his name is James. And if he spoke to me the way that I spoke to myself, we would be broken up. Like, no, it's true, right? Like, I'm so, not as much now, because again, I've been in 20 years of therapy, but throughout my life, like the way I've spoken to myself is so mean and so unproductive. And if he said half that crap to me, I would just be like, get out of this house. Like, I don't want you around. But for some reason, when I say it to myself, it's like, it's okay. But it's not productive. Like, it'd be different if talking to myself in that way was productive, but it's not. Like, when you shame yourself and you're belittling of yourself, it just makes you want to eat more cookies and skip more workouts, because you just feel like a failure. So I think so. And then to step back from that, I think the problem is when I say this to people, what they understand, what they think I'm saying is that you should be, quote, nice to yourself or easy to yourself. And that's not what I'm saying. Like, I think there's this thing, it's not a binary. It's not either like you hold your toes to the fire, or you say to yourself, just eat 75 million cookies and 2 tubs of ice cream and have as much junk food as you want. Like, it's not this one or the other. It's that there's a way to talk to yourself. There's a way to hold your toes to the fire that's actually very productive. And then there's a way to hold your toes to the fire that is just going to make you feel like crap. And that's what I try to help with people, is like, how do you talk to yourself in a way where you love yourself and you respect yourself, and it's actually motivating versus demotivating. I often come back to the idea of parenting yourself. So like, if you had a child and the child came home from school and they said, I failed my math test, you wouldn't say to the child, well, you're a failure and you should just like quit school and like move down to the basement and never come out again. And like, I'm disowning you. Like, you wouldn't say that. You also wouldn't say like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. Who cares? We don't care about math. Right? Like, you'd say like, can we get you a tutor? Or are you being bullied? Or what are the systems that need to be put in place? Like, we'd hold the kids' toes to the fire. Like, we want them to improve, but we want them to improve in a way that isn't that shaming, right? And so I really try to encourage that in my clients. Like, how can they say to themselves, okay, yeah, I didn't go to the gym. Okay, so why not? Did you not get a good enough sleep? And if maybe you didn't go to sleep because you had drank too much coffee, right? Or maybe it's because you need to be better at setting boundaries at work. Like, maybe you were up until 2 a.m. working when you need to learn how to delegate. Like, so many people, especially really high achieving people, it's amazing. it's like they feel like they have to do everything themselves. And then really they're prioritizing things that like are not, they say they're not that important to them, but they're not actually prioritizing the things like their health that they say are important.
Mhm.
So sometimes it's a matter of saying, okay, like in order to say yes to a 6 a.m. workout, I got to say no to these 3 other things. And it doesn't mean that those 3 things don't get done, but I have to delegate. Like that's why I have an assistant, or that's why I have like junior people who work for me. And I have to just trust that I'm a good enough leader that they're going to be able to do this work.
Mhm.
So again, I go back to like step back, look at your life and figure out like what are the things that are holding you back, both with your self-talk and your mindset. And then try to analyze that. Like, what is your goal?
Mhm.
And in a very productive way, like what are the things that you could do, what systems that you can set in place, and what ways you could talk to yourself that are actually going to produce the results that you want,
Mhm.
versus just make you feel like absolute dog crap, because feeling like dog crap is not helpful.
No, you're right. You're right about that. Now transitioning in women fitness, because I know you being a trainer for over 20 years. Is this when you? Because I'm thinking of the new year. So every time you go to New Year,
Okay.
you see everybody on the treadmill going crazy, right? Trying to lose the weight. But for me, I've talked to other fitness trainers as well. When I've asked them the same question, they say that's not the way to go. So I just want to ask you. So women they say they want to lose weight. So they go in, they kill themselves on the treadmill, hit the stairmaster for 2 hours, and they think that's it. They think that's just the way to go. What are your thoughts on that? And then, are there any tips that you can give them that help them successfully lose weight at that?
Oh my God, I'm just laughing because I actually feel like this is such a like this is a question that really is so complicated. And women, oh God, our hormonal system is so complicated. Or maybe complicated is not the quite word. Sensitive is maybe the right word.
Mhm.
Um, so I think part of it is that, first of all, strength training, strength training, strength training. You have to look at it. You can't just, people want to do cardio because they're like, oh, I got to do burn calories, burn calories, burn calories. But it's just so much more complicated than that. And for sure, burning calories, sweating feels good. I mean, I would lie if I love running. I'm a runner, I'm a triathlete.
Mhm.
But I also really believe, like for myself, I don't run to get in shape. I get in shape to run, meaning I do all my strength training, I do all my stuff so I'm strong enough to run. So first of all, I guess I would say that you don't want to just do cardio because you're going to get injured. And if you're not strong enough to do the cardio, then you're going to get injured and you're going to have to stop anyway. So that's sort of not even related to weight loss. That's just related to sort of consistency and injury prevention. You have to have a well-balanced routine, or you're going to hurt your knees, you're going to hurt your hips, you're going to hurt your back. So, you need the strength training, you need the core, you need the stretching, you need the cardio. So that's just sort of with consistency, injury prevention, that sort of bucket.
Mhm.
And then the second bucket is, it's with women especially, as we get older, but all women, we have to stop thinking about it as just as a calorie in, calorie out, and think of it more as what is going to balance our hormones.
Mhm.
Because ultimately you can be exercising up the wazoo, and if your hormones are not balanced, like for some women, it's actually, they're going to lose more weight and be better if instead of doing an hour of cardio, they do 20 minutes of cardio and they sleep more, or they do 20 minutes of cardio and they meditate, or they, like, it all depends on what is causing you like the weight gain, right? And as I said, like it could be a food thing, it could be a hormone thing, it could be that you're not sleeping, so your leptin and your ghrelin hormones, like, so you always feel hungry. Could be that you need more healthy fat, like more like protein. Strength training is going to increase your metabolism. Like, it's just, you really need a very holistic approach. And I go back to that, women's bodies are very sensitive. So, it sounds crazy, but you could be doing a low carb diet. And what you could be doing is you could be messing up basically your hypothalamus and your central nervous system. If you're not eating enough carbs, for a lot of women, it messes with your thyroid, messes with, and your brain thinks, oh my God, you're in crisis, you're not safe. And you know what it's going to do? It's going to stop you from having a period. It's going to make you gain weight. And you are going to mess up like all of your sort of inner hormonal workings. And then it's going to be basically impossible to lose weight because your body is like, danger, danger, danger.
Mhm.
So I can send you some links you can include in the show links, show notes of some like interesting articles on this topic if your listeners are interested. But I mean, it's less so for men, but similarly, like if you are like, okay, I'll give you a story. I had a client for a while, for about 6 months. He kept getting all these weird injuries from very low level training, like his elbow and then his hip and then his back. And eventually I said to him, I was like, are you sleeping? And he's like, well, I don't know. And I was like, you know what? I really need you to go to your doctor because I think your testosterone is low. Like you are not recovering in the way that you should be recovering. So we dropped the subject. He didn't say anything. I left that with him. And and about 4 months later, he had a couple really good workouts. And I said, I'm going to call him John. It's not his name, but yeah. I said, John, you're doing really well. Like you've upped your weights and you're recovering. And I was like, you haven't had an injury in like 3 weeks. I was like, did you talk to your doctor? Like, what's going on? And he kind of was sheepish. He said, yeah. He's like, my testosterone was really low.
Wow.
Right. And like, so that's an example of like, we think about this health and wellness of it's only about what we like, it's about calories, it's about what we eat. But our bodies are very complex and we can be exercising with all the right things. Like his exercise program, there was nothing wrong with it, but he was so depleted in sleep and he wasn't able to recover. So the lowest load was causing an injury.
Wow.
So, I mean, I think the net of all of that is just that you have to be able to step back and kind of look at a bigger picture of what's going on. And for women, it's very dangerous to be under eating. It's dangerous to be not eating enough carbs, especially if you're active. Like it's one thing if you don't work out and you sit at your desk 24 hours a day, then you can probably exist on fairly low carbs. But there's so many women that January 1st comes, they do an hour of cardio every day. They eat no carbs, right? And they're eating no healthy fat. And like, if you don't have any healthy fat and you don't have any carbs, it is a year from now, you are going to be so low energy, so irritated, everything's going to be off. You're not going to be able to sleep. And then you're going to gain 10 pounds and not going to be able to lose it because your body is literally going to be like, you are in crisis mode. You are starving yourself. You are killing yourself. So anyway, that I think my answer to you, the sort of short version would just be talk to a knowledgeable professional if you feel confused by all of this stuff, and try to think of it like a slightly more balanced approach. Like don't just have this myopic, like cardio. For sure, some cardio is important, some interval training is important, but life is a balance and you need, the 3 pillars of a healthy body is the strength training, the stretching, and the cardio, and you need all 3. And then on top of that, you need the foundation of healthy nutrition that's actually feeding your body, not starving your body. And then you need sleep. And like, it's so like sleep regulates everything. It's like the Swiss Army knife of healthy habits. Like it helps everything, right? Like if you're not sleeping, you're not digesting your food as well. If you're not sleeping, your body, your brain, you're not recovering as well, all your hormonal rebalancing. So just step back and look at sort of everything, have a slightly more bird's eye view. And remember that if you took 30 years to create sort of unhealthy habits, it's not going to be changed in a day, right? Like you can't go to the gym once and sweat it out for an hour and then create a whole new you. It's going to take a while to change your habits, and that's okay. That's just normal. That's how it works.
Now, on the topic of nutrition, while we're there, I know some people they talk about tracking the macros. Now, I know you have a secret tip on how to do that, especially women. Well, men, especially like myself. Like I've never really been big into that. I've just started recently. Started tracking what I eat. But what are some tips that you can give them, and how important is nutrition when it comes to fitness?
I'm only laughing because I actually think that my secret tip is not to track them unless you're in what I would call level 2 of nutrition. So my thing with nutrition is a lot of people try to optimize the margins before they've gotten the basics, meaning if you are, an athlete, or if you're somebody, competing for a bodybuilding competition or something, and you want to go from 16% body fat to 12% body fat, sure, you track your macros, go for it. But that is because you probably have dialed down on all of the, what I call Captain Obvious approaches to health, but they're basically the building blocks of health. And it is amazing how many people come. Like I look at so many food journals and people will come and I'll be like, okay, how do you eat? And they're like, oh yeah, pretty good. I don't eat a lot of sweets and, I pretty much eat okay. And we look at it and, they might think they're eating 1 piece of junk food a week and they're eating like 3 a day. They're eating so much of what I call unhealthy, healthy foods, which are foods that are like marketed as healthy, that have like buzzwords like gluten-free and protein filled and all this crap. And really they're just like a bunch of preservative filled crap in like a cellophane container, So the Captain Obvious, the things that if you took a chart and you had all the different diets, like the keto and the paleo and all that stuff, what all of them have in common in the center of that sort of like Venn diagram is eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full, drink water, eat vegetables, be able to pronounce your food. Like broccoli has one ingredient, broccoli. If you're eating a bunch of food that you cannot pronounce the ingredients, stop that, right? If you're eating a bunch of, like, if you're drinking 12 Cokes a day, stop it, right? Like those, dial in on those. And once you, and the problem is it seems so easy, right? Or not easy, it doesn't seem easy. It seems so simple. It seems too simple to be worthwhile, right? People, but they're like, but I'm paying you, Kathleen. Like, tell me the secret sauce. And I'm like, the secret sauce is to actually do the work every day. The secret sauce is to be like, I drink water before, like I drink my water, I eat my vegetables. And until you're eating your 5 to 10 vegetables a day, until you're staying away from processed foods, until you're not having a lot of sugar, like that, get that stuff down, like really get that. And then you can decide where you want to go from there. But that's level 1 nutrition. And until you have that, most people need consistency of the basics before they implement any of the complexity, right? And again, not opposed to the macro counting. I've done it in my life. I have lots of clients that I do counsel them on, but I do not counsel them on that until they can tell me, I know what I'm eating on a daily basis. Like, it's amazing the amount of people who say they quote eat healthfully. You ask them, okay, well, what did you eat? I don't know. Well, like I had something yesterday. What did you eat? And he just thought about it for a long time. He's like, oh, well, I actually think I had an apple fritter for breakfast. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, what do you have for lunch? And then like just all through the day, it was all those things of like not health, like it wasn't healthy. But when he thought about how he ate, he's like, oh yeah, I eat healthy. But it's like, what does that mean? Right. So until you journal your food for a couple of weeks, and until you actually see what you eat, not what you think you eat, but what you eat on a consistent basis, not what you eat one day out of the month, but like what you eat over the month, then we'll talk, right? Because so many people, we overestimate the healthy choices and we underestimate our unhealthy choices. Or we say to the trainer, like, we talk about the one day we ate well when we were put on our diet, but then we don't mention the 17 days. Like you had one good day and then 17 bad days, and you don't mention those 17 bad days. You're like, yeah, this one day, that's how I always eat. I'm like, is it really, or no, is it not? And it's fun. Like, I don't know, like I'm not judging. Like there's no, like if you want to eat French fries and whatever, like go for it. But just know that if you eat those foods, that choice, like you're going to feel a certain way. You're going to get certain results. Like again, I do not choose my clients' goals. It's their goals. What I do is make sure that the work that they're willing to put in matches their goals. So if somebody comes into me and they say, okay, I want to run a marathon, I gotta say, so here's how you run the marathon. You do this strength training, you do this, you stretching, you do this. And then most people look at that and they say, well, I don't have time to do all that. I don't want to do that. I was like, fine. So then don't run the marathon. Right? Like not everyone's going to be a pro basketball player, and not everybody has to be, but for you to be a basketball player of the caliber you were, like you put in a lot of effort, right? Like I'm not like, you didn't just like wish your way to become a basketball player. I didn't wish my way to be an Ironman. Like I trained like super hard because and again, it's not good or bad. I didn't have any kids. I didn't have a lot of like life, things pulling on me. So I was able to do that. But the trick is with people that are listening, when they're thinking January 1st, okay, so if you make your goal to lose 30 pounds, that's great, but that takes a lot of effort. So you better be willing to put in the effort and the planning and to create the systems that are needed to create that 30-pound weight loss, or decide you only want to lose 5, or decide you don't care about the scale and you just want to get stronger. Like I do not judge or care what anybody's goal is, but I care that if you make a goal, you actually succeed, and you will not succeed at a goal if you are not willing to put in the work that is needed to make that goal, right? And that's what I care about. I care about matching the effort you're willing to put in to the goal that you care about. And a lot of times people create goals that are really not their goals, the goal of a favorite celebrity or their father or their mother, whatever it is. They think, well, this is the goal I should have. And it's like, I don't care what you should do. Like, forget about that. What do you actually want? What matters to you, right? And maybe what matters to you is, making your squat really strong. Great. Bench press really strong. Great. Maybe you want to be a really good golfer. Great. I don't care. Like, but each of those things, they require very different things. If you want to be a golfer, we got to work on translation of force. We got to work on mobility. We got to work on ankles. We got to work on hips. Like, that's a very different training plan than if you want to become really strong at bench press. If you want to be strong at bench press, let's do, your 10 by 10 sets or whatever, like, German volume training, or like, it's just very different than becoming a really good golfer. And I can do either plan, and I'm not going to judge either plan. But if you are training to be a golfer and you expect to become a good at bench press, it's just not going to happen, right? So figure out what you want, and then figure out what you need to do to actually get you to what you want.
No, you're right. And I want to ask your personal opinion on this because
Okay.
I want to say like 2, 3 years ago, the gluten-free came about, and then a lot of women just became gluten-free all of a sudden. What are your thoughts on that? Because for me, because I was working at a restaurant, and then all of a
Mhm.
sudden there was just a gluten-free menu out of nowhere. Like, what were you guys eating before this? So what are your thoughts on that personally?
Oh God. Well, so okay, so obviously there are some people that actually need, like if you're a celiac and you have been diagnosed with celiac, you need to be gluten free, and that is a medical condition, and that is something very specific. But a very small amount of people are actually celiac. So that's just know that everything I'm going to say next doesn't pertain. If you have gone to the doctor and you've gotten diagnosed with celiac, that is completely different. You can't digest gluten, different.
Mhm.
So, other than that, I think that there's a lot of interesting subjects about gluten. I think that gluten free is used as one of those things to sell products so often, right? And so people think, oh, well, if it's a gluten free cookie, it must be healthy. And then they eat 10 cookies. And like what I would say is, first of all, 10 of anything's not great. And second of all, if you actually really love the non gluten free one, I'd rather you have one like really high quality cookie that you love versus 10 cookies that you don't really like that you think are healthier because they're gluten free. So that's one thing I would say about gluten free is just make sure that you are not self-sabotaging by kind of pretending that
Mhm.
you're eating something healthy when what you're eating is something that is marketed to you as
Mhm.
a health food. That is not. It is still processed. There's still a bunch of crap in that cookie that you cannot pronounce, right? So again, real food. Like I want clients eating real food. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I actually think that a lot of people don't even know what gluten is, but they know that gluten is in a lot of like carby things. So women will be like, oh, I'm going to be gluten free, but then they'll have like soy sauce that has gluten in it, and they just don't know. Like, so again, I'd rather you just be honest with yourself and say, well, what I actually want to do is eat low carb. So
Mhm.
fine, eat low carb. Like again, I'm really not. I don't, everybody's choices is their own choices. I just want them to be an informed consumer. And I think that with health and wellness, we get really caught on these bandwagons and we think like, oh, well, gluten free is the way to go. So
Mhm.
people often ask me, like, are you gluten free? What I say is like, I don't really eat a lot of gluten, but not because I'm gluten free, but because I just don't eat a lot of foods that have a lot of gluten because I eat a lot. Most of my foods are foods that have the food in it. Like I'll have a sweet potato, and the ingredient of a sweet potato is a sweet potato.
Mhm.
So that's the second thing. And I think the third thing about gluten is, so there's a doctor, he's an endocrinologist. No, that is not true. He's a gastroenterologist. God, I think I'm getting tired. His name is Dr. B. His last name is longer, but he just calls himself Dr. B. He wrote a book called Fiber Fueled.
Mhm.
Anyway, I really like him. He's very smart. If anybody can listen to, like, he did an episode on the Tom Bilyeu Impact Theory podcast, and he's been around. He's fantastic. And he really talks about this idea that we look at digestion in the wrong way. Like we think, oh, we can't digest gluten. We should take gluten out of the diet. And what he says is, what you need to look at is that is data that your digestive organ, like your digestive system, isn't working very well.
Mhm.
And then that is probably means that your microbiome needs to have some work. So do you need more fermented foods? Do you need like probiotics? Do you like, so he's again, like he's sort of this idea of like step back and take more bird's eye view of it, because his opinion is that a lot of people, when they get foods that they can't digest very well, is that they like start eliminating those foods, and then you feel better for a couple of weeks because you've eliminated gluten. Okay, you feel better. And then the next food is like, oh, I can't eat, I don't know, nightshades. A lot of women have issues with nightshades. Okay, so then you pull back on that. And then eventually he's like, the problem is eventually you get to like 7 foods that you can eat. And that's not healthy. Like that doesn't support a healthy immune system. It doesn't help support a healthy digestive system. Like it doesn't support healthy bones.
Mhm.
And those things are all really important. So he would say, like, use it as data if you don't feel as good when you digest those foods. But it's not data that the foods have to necessarily be eliminated. It's more data that you need to figure out, like, what have you done to erode the health of your digestive system? And that might be something to work with the naturopath or with your GP, or
Mhm.
figure out what's going on, because maybe there's been 10 years of, maybe you've had disordered eating, maybe you were anorexic or bulimic or whatever, and you messed around with the gut biome of your digestive system, and then that means you're not able to digest stuff. So maybe what you need to step back and like sort of repopulate and cultivate a healthier digestive system. So there's a lot of different things about different ways to answer the gluten question.
Mhm.
um, But I think it mostly circles back to, again, like what we've been talking about, like knowing what your goals are, being aware, being honest with yourself about why you're choosing certain foods. And, if you're sort of getting on a gluten-free bandwagon because you want to be on a bandwagon, okay, so that's fine. But again, be honest
Mhm.
with yourself. Be
Yeah.
say, like this is I'm doing this thing because everyone else is doing it. Okay, well, fine. If that's what you want to do, right? Like, I don't know. We're all adults. So there's no like mother or father saying like, well, you have to do this.
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty big believer in that we have to find those intrinsic like decisions, because when it's all about what the outside world is telling us, it's too easy to sort of have that adolescent like, I don't want to.
Mhm.
And so same sort of goes with food. Like, it's not, you're not doing it because you're told to do it. You're doing it because you've decided for yourself that it's the
Mhm.
thing that works for you.
And I appreciate you giving all this advice, Kathleen. We could go on for days, but I want to keep
I
you
know.
longer. But typically, I want to know how do you personally balance out your personal life and working out, and what advice can you give clients that maybe they have kids and they're trying to work out and they're trying to fit everything in their schedule? Is there any advice that you could give them?
Yeah. So I would say two things. I think first would be know the stage of life you're in, because for some people, you have to sort of say, okay, so the stage I'm in right now is I have to be more of a busy multitasker, right? So, I take walk while I'm on conference calls, and, I make the dog walk a more active dog walk. And when my kids are at soccer practice, I do lunges and squats on the sideline. Like, that might be, if you're in a really busy period with work or you have multiple kids or whatever, that might be where you're at, and that's fine. I mean, I wouldn't suggest that for the rest of your life, but there are periods of our life, and I think that how I balance my life is going to be different. Like, I don't have kids, and my job is both my passion and my life, so I have quite a bit of free time to put to my workouts.
Mhm.
So part of it is just really appreciating where you are in your life, and what the reality is for you now, and making sure that fitness is always a non-negotiable, but that it can sort of change depending on your life. Um, and then piggybacking on that, I would just honestly say, like, saying yes to your health is saying no to a bunch of other stuff, right? Like, I am a very good with boundaries. And, if I want to do a workout, I will say to James, to my partner, to any of my friends, like, I'll meet you after. Like, I will be a better version of myself if I do this. If I
Mhm.
want to work out in the morning, I go to bed early. And, I do, or I don't know, one of my friends is in visiting for the Thanksgiving weekend, and she's like, "Do you want to have a visit?" And I was like, "Sure, I bet, let's go for a walk." Right. And so it's not like I said, "Well, do you want to have coffee or go for a walk?" I didn't give her an option. I was like, "Yeah, let's go for a walk." And she's like, "Okay." Like, so I think that there's an element of just, if you want to prioritize your health, we all only have a certain amount of cognitive and emotional energy and a certain amount of time. So part of it is just intentionally carving out the time and saying yes to that, and then saying no to other things.
Mhm.
But then appreciating that there will be some times of life, some days, where maybe it really is truly impossible to get an hour and a half at the gym,
Mhm.
or an hour or whatever. And then on those days, you say, okay, I can't do the quote unquote perfect workout, but something is better than nothing. So today is the day that I'm going to take 3 conference calls as I walk. Each conference call is 15 minutes. So that's a 45-minute walk. And I'm going to do some squats and lunges while I'm at the dog park with the dog while they're running around, or I'm going to find a park bench and do some push-ups or whatever. And for today, that is my non-negotiable movement. And it's better than nothing. So the worst thing you can do for yourself is sort of be like, well, I can't do anything, so I might as well like lean into like a bunch of pizza and beer and doing that. Like, it's a
Mhm.
far, like, we exist on a continuum, and when you can't get exactly what you want, we often then flip and doing nothing.
Mhm.
And life is busy, especially if you have families. So, if you have a goal to get to the gym 4 days a week, that's great. But if one of those days, 3 meetings pop up and you weren't able to do the workout in the morning, and at night, maybe your wife has to work and you have to take care of the kids. So then you say to the kids, okay, I will be home, but we're going to go to the park and we're going to play basketball, or we're going to go for a walk, or like, might not be the gym workout you planned, but it's definitely better than nothing. And it teaches your kids that exercise is a non-negotiable, and you get some quality time with them, or whatever it is, go for a walk with a friend, or I don't know, be intentional about it is the key. And when you can't do perfect, you do something.
Definitely, definitely. And I want to just ask you about your 2 books as well. So what
Hmm.
inspired you to write those, and how was the process? I wrote a book myself, so I know
Ah,
how difficult it was just
A
maintain
lot of
momentum.
work.
So how was it for you?
Um, it's a lot of work, but I don't know. There's something about writing that I really like. It's almost like therapy for me. Like it's a definitely time to myself, and that because I write what I'm thinking about and what I'm working through, I find it quite useful. Like I love reading and I love listening to podcasts and I love ingesting information. And sort of then how I digest it is writing and working on it. So I think that it was very, I don't know, useful for me. Like it was a lot of work, don't get me wrong. And like speaking about priorities, I remember one year, my first book, oh my God, it was Christmas. It was Christmas Day, the 25th. And I had Christmas morning with my family. And then I sat at my computer from about 2 o'clock in the afternoon until about midnight finishing because I was on deadline. And like, do I think that's good? Maybe not, but was it absolutely needed? Yes. And like it was the decision that I made. And I don't know, maybe I regret it, maybe I don't. But at the time, I was like, okay, I'm making this choice. And so I don't know, things are all about choices. And I guess I sort of felt that both books really for me both needed to be worked through for myself and also really needed to be said. Like I feel like both of them say something that's important that's not always said in the fitness world. Like the first one is really about, finding solutions and finding what works for you and finding your fit. And then the second one is really about being this informed consumer where that takes like the pros and cons of different approaches and creates like a program that works for you and knowing that the only moment you have to create your fitter you is now. So how do you harness the moment of now? And so I don't know, I just for some reason I just really felt strongly that needed to be said. What's your book on and what like what
So,
what
so
gave you the motivation?
I have one that I'm writing right now. It's called "Tap into the Mind of a College Basketball Player."
Okay.
So it's in the process of that one. And the first one, it was I wrote it during quarantine. It was like Q's dating blueprint. So basically, I know
Oh, cool.
a lot of people struggling with relationships during that quarantine
Mhm.
period. So I basically just wrote a guide to help them. But yeah, it was the same process. It's just when you get into that writer's block, it's hard to try to maneuver. So I put a deadline on myself, like, hey, I'm gonna write this during quarantine, like as soon as quarantine is
Mhm.
over. So I wrote the book in like 2 months. And published
Wow,
it.
good for
But
you.
yeah, it was a lot though. Like you said, it's a you have to have a lot of
Yeah, it's I
inspiration every
mean,
time.
it's a commitment. I mean, I feel like writing though is similar to exercise in the way that
Mhm.
my belief is the same in that you just put it like it's Anne Lamott, she's a writer, and she says it's like bum in the seat time. I sort of feel it's the same thing. Like, the writing's not always going to be perfect, just like my workouts aren't always perfect, but I always show up for them. And I think that that's my like sort of key thing is like, even if I think that whatever I'm going to write is not very good. It's just like a draft and then I edit it. And it's similar with a run. Like if I go for a run and it's not very good, it's okay. So like tomorrow it'll be better, but I'll like
Mhm.
learn from it. So I don't know. It's that sort of iterative process of slowly making things better. But if you're writing a book about your life as a basketball player, have you read Chris Bosch's book?
No, I haven't read it yet.
Okay, so I think it's called Letters to a Young Athlete, maybe.
Okay.
Really, I really like, well, partly it's because he was on the Raptors and Raptors is Toronto. And like, so I feel like a little bit of an affinity to him. But, I mean, you would know way more than me his story, but like this idea of like, he played his last basketball game thinking he was going to play like hundreds more. And then he never went back because he got a blood clot and then he wasn't allowed. So this idea of just being grateful for every moment that you have because you never know when it's going to be your last. And
Mhm.
also this idea of like having to pivot. Like, can you imagine, like, you think you have this career ahead of you? It's like, I think I'm going to be a trainer for the rest of my life. And then I get hit by a car and I
Mhm.
have to do, like, it's just like his life changed so dramatically, so quickly.
Mhm.
And he had to pivot. And anyway, it's a lovely, lovely book. Like, I really like it. It's his sort of life lessons.
Mhm.
And I just feel like no matter if you're an athlete or if you're just a human, like, we all have to learn how to pivot. Like COVID was a huge thing. Like, I used to train everybody in person and then I had to pivot to everything
Virtually.
online. And so it's that skill of being like, oh my God, I was just hit in the face with this massive life change. And it's
Mhm.
so scary, but I'm not going to give up. Anyway, I really like the book. And there's a foreword by a coach that if I said his name, you would know it. Like when I told it to James, he was like, oh yeah, I forget, of course, because I'm not as into sports as I probably could be. But it was somebody that was a mentor to Bosch. And anyway, it was, I think when he was in Miami, anyway, it doesn't matter. I think you'd really like the book. And I found it very profound. I found it, especially in COVID, just really important to be reminded that everybody has a story and everybody has a struggle. And you look at these people, like you think of somebody like, an NBA player basketball. It's like, oh, well, they have the life, they have money, they have everything. It's like, no, like we all have a struggle. Like we all have something that makes it hard to get up in the morning, and we all have to find a way to get up,
Got you. And before I let you go, I just want to ask, what is a typical day like for you?
Oh, so it depends on, I have client days and then I have media days. So Wednesday's a media day. So that's sort of different. Client days are basically like full on seeing clients. And I see a combination of, my youngest client is like a 13-year-old swimmer. My oldest client, he's 88, and his goal is just to kind of get down and off the ground. So I see a huge variety of people now, mostly over Zoom because of the pandemic stuff. And then my week is peppered with, on Wednesday, I do a lot of media. So today I did 3 podcasts, and then I have a meeting with my team. Like I'm doing a website analysis. So I'm meeting with them, did a big Peloton this morning, groceries. So Wednesdays is like a grocery day. Like I do a lot of system setup on Wednesday. So I batch cook a bunch of vegetables. I batch cook some like chicken breasts and like stuff. So I have in my fridge, like really easy, healthy stuff to prepare. So I batch cook on Sundays and Wednesdays. So Sundays are cooking for sort of like Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesdays are cooking for kind of Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And Sunday is my sort of family day. I do a lot of like a big adventure with the dog and James. And yeah, I feel very lucky. Like my life is pretty amazing. I feel very, very grateful for, I don't know, I have amazing people in my life, and it's really cool to work with such a wide range of human beings, from athletes to, people who have injuries. I have clients with MS, I have clients with Parkinson's, and it's just like, you're just reminded every day of how real life is, like that idea of everyone's having a struggle. But yeah, I love doing these podcasts. And so Wednesdays, media writing. So, some Wednesdays I'm at my desk writing for like 10 hours. Some days it's podcasting, I do media, like TV slots and stuff. So I used to travel a lot, but now with COVID, I don't as much. So
and like I said, I appreciate you coming on the show. You gave a lot of great insight, and I know this is going to be very useful, especially when it comes out near the top of the year, because I know a lot of people are going to be going back into the fitness and going back to the gym. And like I said, they're going to lose that motivation. So when they hear this, that'll hopefully be able to help them get over the hurdle.
Good. Well, it was a pleasure to talk, and I would love anybody who listens, if they have any questions. KathleenTrotter.com is my website, and Fit by Kathleen T is my on all the socials. So I always love answering questions. If anything, you just let hold of me, and I will be there to help you stay motivated and give any answers that I can.
And before I let you go, the last question I have is a question I ask all my guests. What is something you're most grateful for?
Oh my goodness gracious. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for James. So my partner, I've been with him since high school for 20 years. I'm grateful he puts up with me. I'm grateful for my dog, because I never thought I was a dog person. And then James got this dog, and at first I was like, nah. And then I'm like, oh my God, it's just like the joy in her face. Like, I'm grateful for my parents and my mom. Mainly, I think I'm just grateful that I have the space to grapple with all this stuff. Like, I'm very aware that the fact even that I can go to therapy for 20 years is such like a privilege. Like, on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs of like, getting food and housing and that stuff, I have those things covered. And that's something that so many people in this world don't have. And so I get to like think about like philosophy and psychology and like all that stuff. And that's a huge privilege. So I'm grateful for that, because I love it. I love thinking about what motivates people. And I love thinking about, how we can make ourselves happier and healthier. But, you can't think about that stuff if you're worrying about how to put food on the table and that stuff. So I feel very grateful that I have a life where I can sort of, contemplate all this higher stuff.
No, definitely. And I'll have all your show notes, all your information in the show notes. So links to your books and your website as well. Like I said, I appreciate you coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
It's my pleasure. It's really, really fun to talk to you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Q's Health and Wellness Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe or to leave us a review on iTunes or the listening platform of your choice. Also, please check us out at QuinnMitchellII.com, as well as find us on Instagram for more useful content and resources.